The river maze was the pride of Willow Creek. A swirling network of waterways and lush green islands, it was a favorite playground for all the animals. But today, the maze was a mess. Thick vines, fallen logs, and heaps of leaves had clogged the passages, turning the joyful labyrinth into a tangled trap. Ollie, a small otter with a perpetually thoughtful expression, stared at the blockage with a furrowed brow. He wasn't known for his strength, but for his mind. Ollie loved puzzles. Any puzzle. A tricky arrangement of pebbles, a knotted rope, or even a particularly challenging mudslide, Ollie thrived on figuring things out. "It's no use, Ollie," boomed Barnaby Bear, attempting to heave a particularly stubborn log. "We need to push through it. Pure muscle is the only way." He strained, his fur bristling with effort, but the log wouldn't budge. Several other animals joined in, a chorus of grunts and groans filling the air, but the maze remained stubbornly blocked. "That's not going to work, Barnaby," Ollie said softly, carefully stepping around a frustrated badger. "Pushing will just compact everything tighter. There has to be a way to untangle it, to find the natural flow again." A small voice, trembling with fear, piped up. But it's so big and twisty. What if we get lost?" It was Pip, a tiny duckling, his yellow fluff ruffled with worry. He clung to his mother's wing, peering nervously at the maze's entrance. "Lost?" Ollie tilted his head. "It's a maze, Pip, of course. It's designed to be a bit confusing. But that's the fun of it. And getting lost is just another part of the puzzle." "Easy for you to say," Pip mumbled, burying his head under his mother's wing. "You're good at puzzles. I just want to be safe." Inside the maze, a chorus of distressed chirps, squeaks, and growls rose above the sounds of struggling animals. Rosie Rabbit was hopping frantically in a small clearing, her nose twitching with anxiety. "We've been stuck for hours. My little ones need clover." Old Man Tortoise, usually a picture of calm, was looking decidedly flustered. "This is most inconvenient. I was on my way to a very important dandelion judging competition." Ollie listened, his heart sinking. He knew Barnaby's approach wasn't working, and the animals were getting desperate. He took a deep breath. "I'm going to investigate," he announced, his voice surprisingly firm. "I'll try to find out why the maze is blocked and how to unblock it. It might take time, but I think I can figure it out." Barnaby scoffed. "Time we don't have, little otter. But go ahead, waste your time with your thinking. We'll be here, doing something." Ollie ignored the bear's skepticism. He knew his strength wasn't in muscle, but in his mind. And right now, the river maze needed a thinker, not just a pusher. Ollie, determined to unravel the mystery of the blocked maze, started his investigation. But he quickly realized he couldn't do it alone. He needed help. First, he sought out Dax, a sturdy beaver known throughout Willow Creek for his building skills. Dax was currently attempting to dismantle a particularly large pile of branches with his powerful jaws and surprisingly agile paws. "Dax," Ollie called out, dodging a flying twig. "Any luck?" Dax paused, wiping sweat from his brow with a muddy paw. "Not much. This stuff is tougher than it looks. I thought a good solid effort would clear a path, but it's just shifting the problem around. More falls down as I get some clear." He gestured with a frustrated flick of his tail. Sometimes, brute force just isn't the answer. "Exactly," Ollie exclaimed, relieved to have a collaborator. "I think there's something more to this than just a random pileup. I suspect something caused the blockage, and we need to figure out what." Just then, a nervous voice squeaked, Are you sure it's safe to go deeper in? It's awfully dark and twisty." It was Pip, the little duckling, cautiously waddling behind Ollie. "It'll be all right, Pip," Ollie reassured him. "VLS Diktogeter. And who knows, maybe your sharp eyes will spot something we miss." They ventured further into the maze, navigating around tangled vines and over slippery logs. Dax, despite his initial attempts at clearing a path, now followed Ollie's lead, using his strength to steady them on uneven ground. Suddenly, Ollie stopped. "Look." He pointed to a large iridescent shell nestled amongst a cluster of ferns. It was unlike any shell he'd seen before, swirling with shades of pink, blue, and gold. Dax carefully lifted the shell. It was surprisingly heavy. What do you think is inside?
Olli gently pried it open.
Inside, resting on a bed of soft moss, was a small, rolled-up scroll tied with a strand of river reeds. He unfurled it carefully, revealing a beautifully written riddle. I have no voice, but I speak to the shore.
I have no hands, yet I shape the river's core. Wen swift I flow, the matze is free.
But stillness brings the tangle you see. What am I? Dax frowned.
Sounds complicated.
Something about the river, obviously. But what? He scratched his head with a claw. Pip, who had been quietly observing, suddenly chirped, "Wait. Look at the shell. There's a tiny carving of a whirlpool on the bottom." Ollie examined the shell closely. Pip was right. A delicate spiral was etched into the pearly surface.
A whirlpool, that's it.
The riddle isn't just about the river, it's about the current.
The river's current.
So, what does that mean? Dax asked, still puzzled. It means the blockage isn't random. Something is disrupting the river's natural flow. Ollie explained, his eyes shining with excitement. We need to find out what's slowing the current down. This shell. This is our first real clue. He looked at Pip with a grateful smile. And you, Pip, you spotted the key detail. You have a remarkable eye for things. Pip puffed out his chest a little, a shy smile spreading across his face. I just noticed it. But even he could feel a surge of confidence. Maybe he was good at something, even if it wasn't being brave. Ollie, Pip, and Dax followed the riddle's instructions, their paws and webbed feet padding softly along the tangled banks of the river maze. The current, though slowed, still gurgled and whispered secrets as they moved. Finally, they arrived at a place where the river bent sharply, and a truly ancient willow tree stood, its branches weeping towards the water like long green fingers. Its trunk was immense, covered in knots and ridges that looked like a roadmap of time. This is it, Ollie declared, tapping the trunk with a paw. The riddle spoke of a wise old willow, and a song within its bark. Dax circled the tree, examining it with a practical eye. Lots of old bark. Plenty of places for something to be etched. But finding it, that's the trick. He ran a claw along a particularly deep groove. This wood is tough though. Someone must have been very determined. Pip, who had been nervously fluttering around, suddenly chirped, "Look. Over there. The bark is different. Lighter color, and there are lines." He pointed a wing towards a section of the trunk partially hidden by a curtain of leaves. Ollie and Dax followed Pip's gaze. Sure enough, the bark in that spot was smoother and lighter, and intricate patterns were carved into its surface. These weren't random scratches, but deliberate symbols, swirling lines and dots that seemed to hum with an ancient energy. Well, that's no ordinary carving, Dax said, scratching his head. Looks like some kind of old language. It is, Ollie breathed, his eyes shining with excitement. These are the symbols of the river folk, the ones who lived here long before any of us. I've seen them in old stories. He began tracing the symbols with a paw, muttering to himself. This one represents the flow, and this, the stones. And this one, the heart of the river. As Ollie deciphered the symbols, a grumpy croaking voice interrupted them.
HMPH. Wasting your time, you are. Old stories and silly riddles.
The maze is blocked because of a fallen log, plain and simple. Should have just pushed it aside like I said. A plump, green frog sat on a nearby lily pad, glaring at them. It was Old Man Grumble, known throughout the woods for his pessimism. Old Man Grumble, Ollie said politely, we're trying to understand why the maze is blocked, not just move the blockage. The riddle suggests there's more to it.
Bah! Grumble scoffed.
More to it? It's always more to it with you clever types. Sometimes, a thing is just a thing. But if you insist on your riddle solving, look for the spiral. The river folk always spoke of the spiral when they talked about the river's song. With that, Grumble dipped into the water and disappeared. Ollie, a little surprised by the frog's unexpected hint, returned to the carving.
The spiral.
He's right. There is a spiral hidden within the larger pattern. He traced the almost invisible spiral with his paw, and as he did, a new section of the bark seemed to glow faintly.
I think I've got it,
Ollie exclaimed. The riddle. It's not just about the river's song, but about the way the water flows in a spiral, creating the currents.
It says, Wer se spiral danses, en se water vispas lo, seg se hat zet knos wer se lost currents go.
The lost currents, Dax mused, stroking his chin. That has to mean where the river branches, or where the flow gets disrupted. There's a large school of shimmerfins that gather near the Sunstone Bend. They're sensitive to changes in the currents. Maybe they know something. Pip chirped nervously, underwater? But I'm just a duckling. I can swim, but it's dark and fishy down there. Ollie smiled reassuringly. We'll go together, Pip. And Dax can build us a way to sea without getting wet. He turned to the builder. Dax, do you think you could fashion a little platform, maybe overhanging the bend? Something we can use to observe the shimmerfins?
Dax grinned.
Consider it done. Give me a few minutes and some sturdy branches, and I'll have a viewing platform that'll make a kingfisher jealous. He immediately set to work, expertly weaving branches and vines together, securing them to the riverbank with strong knots. While Dax built, Ollie and Pip walked towards the Sunstone Bend. The water here was crystal clear, revealing smooth, colorful stones lining the riverbed. Soon, they saw them, hundreds of shimmerfins, their scales flashing like 1,000 tiny mirrors as they moved in perfect unison. Wow! Pip breathed, forgetting his fear for a moment. They're beautiful.
And look!
Ollie exclaimed, pointing. They're not just swimming randomly. They're forming patterns. Like they're writing something in the water. Dax soon joined them, proudly presenting his observation platform. All right, you two. Step right up. Safe and dry viewing for the discerning riddle solver. From the platform, the patterns of the shimmerfins became even clearer. They swirled and looped, creating fleeting images in the water. Pip, being the smallest and most agile, was able to get a closer look, leaning over the edge of the platform. I think I see something. Pip chirped excitedly. They're making shapes. A heart. And inside the heart, there are little bubbles rising, forming letters. Ollie strained his eyes. You're right, Pip. It's a riddle. They're spelling it out with bubbles. He quickly transcribed the shimmering message onto a smooth stone he'd brought along. The riddle read, I beat within the river's breast, a gift forgotten, a love suppressed. Find what's lost, and make it whole, to awaken the river's soul. The river's heart, Ollie repeated thoughtfully. What could that mean? What gift has been forgotten? Dax scratched his head. A gift. Could be anything. Food, shelter, something the river provides. But love suppressed. That's a strange addition. Pip suddenly remembered something. My grandmother used to tell stories about how the animals used to sing to the river, and leave gifts of flowers and berries for the river spirit. She said they thanked the river for all it gave them. Ollie's eyes widened. That's it. A gift of gratitude. The river's heart isn't a place, it's a feeling. The animals have stopped showing their appreciation, and the river spirit feels forgotten. The riddle of the river's song tugged at Ollie's thoughts as they moved deeper into the maze. A song? But what kind of song? He murmured, tracing the etched symbols on the willow bark with a paw. Perhaps it's not a song we hear, Dax rumbled, carefully examining the maze walls for any further clues. Maybe it's a song the river makes. Pip, surprisingly, chirped up, like how it gurgles and splashes, or when it's quiet and smooth. He's been growing more confident with each clue, his initial fear replaced by a blossoming curiosity. Ollie's ears perked up. That's a good point, Pip. A song of movement, of flow. The riddle mentioned shimmering. What shimmers in the river? Dax paused his inspection, a thoughtful expression on his face. The fish, of course. The school of shimmering fish near the Sunstone Bend. I've seen them. They move as one, like a ribbon in the water. Exactly. Ollie exclaimed. The riddle said, "Where the river's song finds its rhythm, look to the dance of 1,000 lights." It has to be the fish. They hurried toward the sunstone bend, the maze walls closing in around them. Arriving at the bend, they found a wide pool of water, sunlight filtering through the leaves and causing the scales of the fish to glitter. The school moved in mesmerizing patterns, swirling and diving in perfect unison. "How are we supposed to find a clue in that?" Pip asked, his voice small. "It's just a lot of fish." "We need to observe," Ollie said, his eyes scanning the patterns. "There's a reason the riddle led us here. They're not just swimming randomly." Dax, ever the practical one, was already at work. "I'll build a small platform. We need to get a better view without disturbing them." He quickly began gathering sturdy branches and weaving them together, creating a small, raised platform overlooking the pool. "That's brilliant, Dax," Ollie said, admiring his friend's handiwork. "Now we can really see their patterns." As they watched, Pip suddenly gasped. "Look! They're forming shapes. Not just swirls, but letters. It's like they're spelling something." Ollie and Dax leaned closer, their eyes following the fish's movements. Sure enough, as the school weaved and turned, the shimmering shapes coalesced into recognizable forms. They were spelling out a word: heart. Heart. Dax questioned, scratching his head. "What does the river's heart have to do with anything?" The riddle asked about the river's heart, not its source or its banks, Ollie mused. What gives the river life? What does it cherish? Pip, surprisingly insightful, chirped, "The animals. The river gives us water, and plants, and a home. It gives us everything." "You're right, Pip," Ollie exclaimed. "But what if the river feels forgotten? What if it feels like we've stopped appreciating its gifts?" A shadow crossed Dax's face. I haven't thanked the river in a long time. None of us have, really. We just take it for granted." Ollie felt a pang of sadness. The riddle wasn't just about solving a puzzle, it was about remembering something important. "I think we need to find out what's troubling the river's heart. I have a feeling the next clue lies with the one who feels the most." The riddle of the river's heart revealed a truth that resonated deep within Ollie. The river spirit wasn't angry, it was lonely. The animals had simply forgotten to appreciate the river's gifts. It felt like a forgotten friend, longing for a kind word, a small gesture, a sign that it was still valued. "It's not about a blockage, is it?" Ollie mused, his voice quiet. "It's about forgetting." Dax, who had been meticulously examining the map of the maze, looked up. "Forgetting what, exactly?" "Forgetting to say thank you," Pip chirped, surprising both of them. He'd been unusually quiet, processing the implications of the riddle. The willow tree told stories of how the animals used to leave offerings, sing songs, show the river they cared. A flashback flickered in Ollie's mind. He hadn't experienced it himself, being relatively new to the river maze, but he could feel the memory. A vibrant scene of otters leaving shiny pebbles, birds weaving flowers into the reeds, and badgers composing little tunes on hollow logs, all presented with cheerful gratitude to the shimmering water. "It was a tradition," Dax rumbled, a hint of sadness in his voice. "A way of life. Then, well, life got busy. Everyone just started taking from the river, without giving anything back."
The realization hung heavy in the air.
Ollie knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his puzzle-solving heart, that they needed to remind the river spirit of its worth. But an apology felt insufficient. The spirit needed more than just acknowledgement of their mistake, it needed a heartfelt expression of gratitude. "We need to show it," Ollie declared, his eyes gleaming with newfound determination. "We need to remind the river spirit how much it means to us." "But how?" Pip asked, his voice small. "It's withdrawn. It won't even let us near the misty cove." Ollie thought for a moment, pacing back and forth. He closed his eyes, picturing the swirling patterns of the fish, the gentle sway of the willow branches, the life-giving flow of the water. An idea began to form, a spark of inspiration igniting within him. "I'm going to write it a poem," he announced. A poem that celebrates everything the river does for us. A poem that will remind it of its beauty and its importance. Dax raised an eyebrow. A poem? You, Ollie?
The puzzle master?
Ollie grinned. Even a puzzle master can appreciate a good story. And a good poem is just a puzzle of words, isn't it?
Pip's face lit up. That's a wonderful idea, Ollie.
While you're doing that, Dax said, already moving towards the surrounding flora, Pip and I will gather some gifts. Flowers, smooth stones, anything we can find to show our appreciation. As Ollie sat down to write, the weight of the task settled upon him. It wasn't about rhyming words or clever metaphors. It was about capturing the essence of the river, the feeling of life and joy it brought to the maze. He dipped a feather into berry juice, using a broad leaf as his parchment, and began to write, pouring his heart into every line. The misty cove held its breath as Ollie, standing small but resolute before the swirling fog, began to recite his poem. His voice, though initially trembling, gained strength with each verse, echoing through the silent maze. O river, lifeblood of our home, your currents weave, where shadows roam. You quench our thirst, you nourish and feed. A gentle friend in our time of need. He continued, painting vivid pictures with his words, the sunlight dancing on the water, the fish leaping and playing, the trees bending in grateful acknowledgement of the river's embrace. He spoke of the river's patience, its resilience, and the joy it brought to every creature in the maze. As the final words faded into the mist, a soft, ethereal glow emanated from within the cove. The swirling fog began to thin, revealing a shimmering form, the river spirit, no longer shrouded in sadness, but radiating a gentle warmth. A single tear, like a drop of liquid moonlight, traced a path down its face. Then, something miraculous began to happen. The tangled vines that had choked the maze started to loosen their grip, their thorny embrace softening. The fallen logs, once insurmountable barriers, began to rise and float away, carried by a renewed current. It wasn't a violent surge, but a gentle, purposeful flow, as if the river itself was sighing with relief. It's working," Pip exclaimed, his voice filled with wonder. He waddled forward, followed closely by Dax, who had been silently observing with a mixture of awe and relief. Dax immediately sprang into action, his builder's instincts taking over. "We need to reinforce these banks," he declared, already gathering stones and branches. "Prevent this from happening again. A little planning can go a long way." He began carefully constructing a series of small dams and supports, strengthening the riverbanks and ensuring a consistent flow. Meanwhile, Pip, overcome with joy, gathered his duckling siblings. "Come on," he quacked excitedly. "Let's thank the river spirit." He led a chorus of cheerful chirps and splashes, the ducklings paddling in circles, their tiny wings beating in a joyful rhythm. Soon, other animals, freed from their leafy prisons, joined the celebration, their gratitude echoing through the maze. Squirrels chattered their thanks, rabbits thumped their feet in appreciation, and even the grumpy frog croaked a surprisingly melodic tune. Ollie watched, a warm feeling spreading through his chest. It wasn't just the maze that had been restored, it was the connection between the animals and the river, a connection forged anew through kindness and respect. The river spirit, now fully visible, offered a gentle nod in his direction, a silent acknowledgement of his efforts. The river maze was alive again, vibrant and full of joy. The air hummed with renewed energy, and the water flowed freely, carrying with it a promise of peace and prosperity. Ollie knew this was just the beginning. They had saved the maze, but their responsibility didn't end here. They were now the keepers of this magical place, entrusted with safeguarding its beauty and ensuring its continued well-being. The celebration continued long into the afternoon, a kaleidoscope of fur, feathers, and scales swirling with joy. Even Bartholomew, the grumpy frog, hopped forward, clearing his throat with a croak that surprisingly carried a note of sincerity. "Ahem," he began, looking directly at Ollie. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. I thought your puzzle solving was foolishness, a waste of time. But you proved me wrong. You and your friends showed us that sometimes, the strongest solutions aren't about force, but about understanding and kindness." A ripple of surprised, then approving, murmurs spread through the crowd. Bartholomew, looking thoroughly embarrassed but determined, presented Ollie with a perfectly polished river stone. A small token of my respect. Ollie smiled, accepting the gift. Thank you, Bartholomew. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. He glanced at Pip and Dax, a warmth spreading through his chest. They had done it. Together. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the maze, Ollie, Pip, and Dax stood near the riverbank, watching the water flow peacefully. Dax was meticulously reinforcing a section of the bank with woven branches and stones, ensuring its stability for years to come. Pip was directing a group of ducklings in collecting colorful wildflowers, preparing a fresh offering for the river spirit. You know, Dax said, wiping sweat from his brow, I always believed in getting things done with good, solid work. Building, fixing, making things strong. But you showed me, Ollie, that there's more to it than that. You used your brain, sure, but you also used your heart. That's what truly made the difference. Pip, waddling over with a beakful of blossoms, added, and it wasn't just your heart, Ollie. It was all of ours. We all needed to remember to be grateful for the river. And I wasn't always brave enough to speak up, but you believed in me, and that helped me believe in myself. Ollie felt a blush creep up his cheeks. We all played a part. That's what makes us a team. He looked out at the restored maze, at the animals happily interacting, and at the shimmering form of the river spirit watching over them all. From that day forward, the three friends became known as the River Guardians. They continued to care for the maze, ensuring its health and harmony. But more importantly, they reminded everyone of the importance of gratitude. Every week, the animals would gather by the riverbank, offering songs, stories, and small gifts to the river spirit, a tradition that honored the river's gifts and ensured its continued happiness. And so, the river maze flourished, a testament to the power of brains and heart, and a reminder that even the most challenging riddles can be solved with kindness, compassion, and a little bit of teamwork.